So, imagine you've got a trusty old piggy bank filled with dollar bills that you've been saving up for years. You're so excited because these dollars are supposed to be safe and valuable, right? But here's the thing. Over time, those dollars start losing their value just by sitting there. That's what inflation does to your savings. Let me explain how it works. Inflation is like a sneaky thief that slowly takes away the buying power of your money without you even noticing. If you had $100 in your piggy bank last year, and this year things cost 5% more than they did last year, suddenly your $100 won't buy as much as it used to. That's because inflation is increasing the overall price level in the economy. Here's a simple analogy. Think of inflation as a slow leak in your savings balloon. You can see the top is still full, but over time, the air, the value of your money, escapes, making each dollar worth less than it was before. So, if you had $100 last year and now only have enough to buy things that cost $95, those 5% extra dollars that disappeared are what inflation is doing. And here's the surprising part. Even if you keep your money in a super safe bank account with no risk of losing it, inflation can still eat away at its value. That's because banks pay very low interest rates compared to how fast prices are rising. So over time, your savings don't grow as much as prices do. So next time you see the price of groceries or gas going up, remember that's part of what inflation is doing, making each dollar worth a little less. And that's why it's important to understand inflation when you're planning for the future and saving your hard-earned dollars. Okay, so let's dive into something that might seem intuitive but can be surprisingly misunderstood. Money as a store of value. Think about it this way. If you had an apple today and tomorrow still had a full, ripe apple, then your apple is acting like a good store of value. It held its worth from one day to the next. Now, let's bring inflation into the picture. Inflation is like that rotten apple. Imagine you have $100 today, which could buy you some apples. But in a few years, due to inflation, those same $100 might only be able to buy half as many apples. That's because over time, the value of your money, the power it has to buy things, decreases. And here's the surprising part. Inflation isn't just about prices going up. It's also about how much you can actually do with the money in your pocket. When inflation hits, every dollar you have starts to lose a little bit of its buying power each year. It's like watching an apple slowly turn brown and unusable. So, why does this matter for your savings? Well, if you put $100 under your mattress or in a saving account with low interest rates, the value of that money can actually decrease over time because of inflation. You might find after just a few years that what you thought was going to be enough to buy groceries is now barely enough to get you through the month. All right, so far we've talked about money as something that can store value, like keeping your savings safe in a piggy bank. Now let's dive into what inflation really is and why it's like having a bigger piggy bank, but fewer apples inside. Here's the deal. Imagine you have a magic piggy bank where you keep all your savings. This piggy bank is special because over time, more and more people decide to fill it up with dollars. Let's call this printing money. But here's the catch. You still only have the same number of apples available in the grocery store. So what happens? Well, when you go to buy an apple, suddenly there are many more dollars in circulation. These extra dollars make the price of each apple rise because everyone now wants to spend their new dollars on apples. As a result, your savings can't buy as many apples as they used to. That's inflation. Let's break it down with another example. Say you have $100 today and could buy 5 apples. But if suddenly the government decides to print more money, and now there are $120 in circulation, same number of apples but same amount of demand for them, you might only be able to afford 4 apples instead. Your dollar isn't worth as much because it can't buy as many goods. And here's the surprising part. Inflation is not just about money printing out of thin air. It's also influenced by things like government spending, trade deals, and even natural disasters that affect supply chains. These factors mean you might find yourself with a bigger piggy bank, but fewer apples to put inside. So, why does inflation eat your savings? Because as the dollar loses value over time due to increased money supply or other economic factors, it can't buy as much of what you need, like those apples we talked about. This is why keeping track of inflation and understanding its effects on your savings is so important. So, we've talked about how inflation works, right? But now let's dive into why it actually eats away at your savings. Think of your savings like a piggy bank full of dollars. each one representing an apple you could buy with that dollar. And just as apples grow more expensive, so do dollars lose their value when inflation happens. Imagine you have $100 in cash. That's 100 apples in your piggy bank. Now, let's say there's a little bit of inflation, say 2% per year. Over time, those 100 apples start to get harder and harder to buy with each dollar. Inflation pushes the prices of things up slowly but surely. And here's the surprising part. Even if you keep your $100 in cash, it won't last as long or as far as before. Let's see how that works over a few years. After 1 year, those 2% might not seem like much. But let's say apples now cost a little more. Maybe instead of costing $1 each, they've gone to $1.02. That means with your $100, you can only buy about 98.04 apples. After 2 years at that same inflation rate, the apples might be even pricier, say $1.04 each. Now your $100 can only buy around 96.2 apples. As time goes on and inflation keeps rising, those dollars in your piggy bank keep getting more expensive to spend. It's like watching your savings slowly drain away because the things you want to buy become costlier over time. So why does this matter for your savings? Because the real value of that money is shrinking. When prices go up faster than your ability to earn, your savings are effectively losing value despite sitting untouched in your piggy bank. So you got a grasp on why inflation eats into savings. But what about those interest rates that banks keep fiddling with? Let's dive deeper. Back in the day, well, not so long ago, you could stick your piggy bank in the ground and it would grow over time. That's how people used to think of savings. A little bit here, a little bit there. But now things are different. Central banks play a big role in this equation. They're like the traffic police on an economic highway. Their primary tool? Interest rates. Here's the surprising part. When inflation starts running wild, central banks raise interest rates. It's kind of like putting a clamp on how many times you can reach into your piggy bank to buy candy or toys. Why does this happen? Well, think about it like this. If borrowing becomes more expensive because of higher interest rates, people and businesses will be less likely to spend their money frivolously. Instead, they'll save up or invest, which slows down the overall spending that drives inflation. It's a bit like telling your little brother he can only have 1 scoop of ice cream instead of 3. He might still want more, but with fewer scoops available, everyone ends up with less. Inflation goes down because there's just not as much stuff flying around to drive prices higher. So, next time you hear the news about interest rates going up, remember, it's not just a boring number. It's a strategic move to keep your savings from being eaten away by inflation. The central bank is essentially trying to protect your piggy bank from those pesky little hand-me-downs. Okay, so we've talked about how inflation is like adding extra costs every time you go grocery shopping. Each trip, it's not just that the apples cost more. There's suddenly fewer of them too. Now, the question remains, what can you do to protect your savings from inflation? Well, consider this. If inflation is making each dollar less valuable over time, then you need an investment that grows faster than inflation itself. Think about it like a piggy bank, but instead of just holding dollars, you're trying to get more apples out of it every year. And here's the surprising part. Investing in things like stocks or real estate can be a bit like that magical piggy bank. When you invest in stocks, you're buying pieces of companies. If those companies are making profits and growing, they can pay higher dividends or increase in value, giving you more to spend than just inflation. Real estate is another strategy. As property values rise over time due to demand and improvements, the same house that was once worth a certain amount now has a higher market value. So, even if your savings account is losing value because of inflation, owning real estate can help you get more bang for your buck. And here's an important point. It's not just about money in the bank. It's about making sure your investments grow faster than the cost of living increases. So, while a savings account might give you some security, it might not be enough to protect your purchasing power from inflation. So, if protecting against inflation is like getting more apples each year, more than the number of dollars in your piggy bank, then stocks and real estate can help you do just that.